The Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences.
Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment.
We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you.
I ended up being put on an involuntary hold of 5150. I was sedated, and when I came to, I was like back in my body. And like I remember everything. I remember everything. I can tell you that a mental health facility isn't where I needed to be, away from my child. And so that was like a 5-day experience. They ended up releasing me like that Saturday, 5 or 6 day. And I came home. I was still running pretty hot. That week, my partner was like, I want a divorce. I'm sure I married the wrong woman. We had been married for 6 months. I was like, what are you even talking about? And so for me, the best way I can relate to my experience was that like my fight or flight was activated, right? So initially it was activated because I had this incredible hormonal imbalance. I got my hormones tested like maybe 2 weeks after like the big surge. My estrogen level was like 212. Normally we sit at like 50 to 60. So, and then the estrogen is like the thing that makes crazy ladies do crazy things. And my progesterone, which is like the balancing hormone, which usually sits at like 10 to 15. Mine was at like 0.03 or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
So I had this like huge discrepancy in my hormones. And the hormone specialist that I did see, she was like, yeah, this, often this gets misdiagnosed as a mental health problem when it's really a hormonal imbalance problem. And so I think that was like definitely a part of the activation of my state. But then, coming back and then like that whole thing with the cops was like, boom, like fight or flight activated in my nervous system in another big way. And then I came back and my flippin' partner was like, I want a divorce. And I have a 2-month-old, and I'm like, wait, this is not what what? No. What?
Yeah.
And so then like my fight or flight was activated again around my relationship, and like this whole vision I thought my life was going to be bringing a child into the world. And so like for about 6 weeks, I really it was like just really gnarly. And at one point I was like, I need to get away from all y'all. And my ex at the time was like, okay, because I wanted to go to Hawaii. I have friends in Hawaii. I have a friend out there. She was like, yo, I got an extra room. You and your baby can come stay, like come get the healing of the island. So I ended up going with a good friend of mine that like my ex trusted with me and the baby. And then so like chilled out. Hawaii was fine. I mean, I was still like on this edge of mania. And I'm nursing. So I was very much like, I don't want to take medications. I'm just medication adverse anyway. So I was like super resistant to all of that, in that state. And anyway, Hawaii was okay. I came back from Hawaii, and as soon as me and my ex like got in the same space, like things flared up again. And that like, I ended up back in the hospital. I ended up back in an involuntary hold. And this time it ended up being 2 weeks. And it was down in Ventura, this place called Vista Del Mar, which was like so horrific. Like it was a co-ed space. I was there with people having like meth psychosis and gangbangers and like schizophrenic, like freak out. And everyone's talking to me like I am crazy or stupid. And I'm trapped. And it just really felt like I was in the belly of the beast. Especially because like all the stuff that I was freaking out about was like medical industrial complex and like all these drugs they were trying to shove down my throat. Like it was absolutely wild. And so that whole time my nervous system was freaking out.
Yeah.
And activated in that fight or flight. So, and separation of my baby. It was still COVID time, so I couldn't have visitors or anything like that. So I finally, and the motherfucker filed for separation and temporary custody of my son while I was hospitalized. So I get out of the hospital and I have to go to court like 2 days later. So I'm like scrambling to find a lawyer. I've never been involved in any court thing ever. So I'm like, I don't even know. And my lawyer wasn't very like sensitive to the fact that I was like a new mom and I had never been, I was just like, what is happening? Like, and he was very like, just not compassionate, like terrible bedside manner, my lawyer. And so then that next month, I could only see my child like 2 hours a day supervised. The fucking lawyer bills, like everything just started racking up. I was so upset with my ex. I'm like, even if you didn't want to be with me, like I'm not trying to fight for somebody who doesn't want to fight for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you really have to do that? He just cost us like thousands of dollars. And it's not like we had a house. Like we didn't have any assets. Like I'm not going to fight to keep your ass. Like obviously I didn't sign up for that, you know? And yeah, I mean, there's like details about it, but I luckily the court was like, holy shit, like this baby is so young, like we need to get this sorted. So they like really like fast tracked us. And my, you know, also for context, my ex is 8 years younger than me. So he's like 27. His wife just lost his mind. He's a new dad. Like I understand he was having a whole experience of his own. And his family like coached him into taking me to court and like separating and all of that. And it was like a real big mind fuck. But ultimately he didn't want to be dad full time. Like, no. So as soon as, like I basically started working with a therapist that like had a good relationship with the court system. And as soon as he was like, you're good, I'll write a letter for you. Like I think his lawyer and him were like, okay, she's good. Like, let's just settle instead of like letting the judge decide. Right. So, thankfully we settled pretty like 6 weeks. It took 6 weeks to like be like, okay, we'll settle on 50-50, no child support on either side. And it's going to be a 2-2-3, like 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, rotation. And God, there was just so much because after psychosis and mania comes depression. So my body was burnt. My adrenals were burnt. And I had about, so that like everything started end of March. That second hospitalization was May 15. I'm actually like right now, I was in the hospital 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I got out Memorial Day Sunday, actually. And then, 6 weeks to settle. So like July 8th was when we were 50-50. And July is when like the depression really hit. Like, and I was so taken out. But plus it was like, not only was like my body going through like depression physically, I was also like grieving my marriage, wrapping my freaking head around 50-50 custody. I was like, are you serious? I'm not going to have my kid half his life. Being a new mom, like, I really wish we had a different conversation around postpartum. And like, I like to call it the initiation. and each child comes with its own initiation. And for sure, I would say the first one is there's some different factors, right? You're literally initiating from not being a mother to being a mother, something that never goes away. Right. And so that evolution and the integration of everything, the grief of the life that's no longer yours anymore, and this new life that's set in. Plus we have like a really unhealthy conversation around motherhood and attitude, like toward mothers. I feel like it's like, I don't know how you grew up, but like I grew up with the messaging of like becoming a mother, like don't want to become a mother too early because like that's it. And like even when it's like get ready to never sleep again. I'm like, you guys need to cool it with your stories.
Yeah.
Because it's not all necessarily true, So anyway, it was the depression really held on till like Thanksgiving that year.
Wow.
There was kind of a turning point for me. And so that was Thanksgiving 2021. I like saw the light, and I actually had my birthday's in December. I had like actually a really good birthday. I had a pretty good holiday season. I had a little romance, got a little action. I was also wrestling with like, what is it like to date with a child? Is anybody, plus I had just been like brutally abandoned by this person I made a vow to.
Yeah.
And his family. And I, all my like abandonment wounding, which is like my root fears of like, ultimately I'm unlovable, was huge, So it was all of that. And also I really didn't like, I don't know. I was going through all this. So I don't know how infant times would have been without all of that. Right. I felt like, what do I do with this thing all day? Like the days that I had him, I was like, what? And everything's gotten way cooler, like as his personality and the engagement. And like, I found baby days like, no, like all my friends' posts of like, stop growing. I'm like, please fucking grow. Please learn to walk. Like, please get to the point where I don't have to like freak out every time I don't have my eyes on you.
Yeah.
And like, it literally is getting better and better for me as a mother. Like, I'm loving like terrible twos. I don't know who coined that. Sure. He's like flexing and getting into his power, but I'm loving like, he's talking to me. He can talk to me. Like he can communicate what he needs. And I can't wait for all of that to keep unfolding. So yeah, I mean, I will say that, there was like there was a lot of saving grace, like throughout all of this. One being, my mom actually found this woman who is the director of a very sweet nonprofit that's here locally that is pregnancy and postpartum support. And they are partners of Postpartum Support International. They're like a affiliate.
Yeah.
And actually this director is also a life coach and had also experienced postpartum psychosis.
Oh, wow.
And so as soon as I was able to connect with her, which it was like right when the depression was hitting, and it was like, I was just hating everything. But I was able to connect with her and see the possibility of my future,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and be like, oh, she went through this too, and she got to the other side.
Mm.
And she was running a free weekly support group for mothers. And that, like, just connecting with other mothers and having them be like, I'm having these intrusive thoughts, and me being like, oh, that's what those are,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like being able to just share space with others who are experiencing this thing that we don't talk about. Like, we're talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
but like as a society, there's so much conversation about, oh my God, motherhood is so wonderful and what a blessing. And are you prepared for birth? Like, I felt so prepared for birth, and then I felt like I fell off a cliff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that conversation around postpartum, it's really hard because I had a great pregnancy and I was very confident about it. And I was like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to kill this thing, you know, like not kill it, but I'm going to rock
Knock it out of the
you know,
park.
I'm I'm going to knock it out of the park. And, I didn't even know postpartum psychosis was a thing. I later found out that people who have experienced psychosis at some point in their life are like much more at risk of experiencing it after birth.
Mm-hmm.
Had I heard that fact, that probably would have gotten my attention. But I also, like, that first experience, I never got hospitalized in a mental health institute the same way I did this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I also didn't know how bad it could get to like get wrapped up in the system in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, like, my partner and I are talking about the possibility of having a kid together. And a big part of that conversation is how to prepare for if something like this were to happen. I mean, it's a conversation whether I have another child or not. You know, like, my brain has gone there twice now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I really do feel like that, like, we're good. But I don't know. I thought that the first time around. So it's really about taking full responsibility of that being a possibility, and like, what is my game plan if it starts going that way,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure like my people know what the game plan is, and like, in this state, creating it so that I'm not lost in the woods, you know, when it occurs.
Yeah.
So I have a question. After you got your
Yeah.
hormones checked and you saw that discrepancy and imbalance between the estrogen and progesterone, did you like take any supplements? How did that kind of level out?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so the person that I was working with, she recommended that I take ashwagandha. She shared that I could take up to like 6,000 milligrams. I think I was taking like 3,000 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
So ashwagandha was something the psychiatrist in that first up in San Jose, she was a woman who was like super sensitive to the fact that I was a new mom, that I was nursing, that I was not wanting to take drugs. And she recommended and prescribed a high dose of omega-3,
Mm-hmm.
like fish oil. So I still take 4,000 milligrams of fish oil every day
Oh, wow.
for this purpose.
Yeah.
They're actually one of the only supplements that's studied. Because I'm on I got the bipolar diagnosis got thrown around for me. And what I learned is that bipolar is actually like kind of an umbrella term for anyone that experiences psychosis. So like I'm just not committed to being on drugs for my whole life for something that may or may not happen again. You know, like my experience is also very uncharacteristic of like kind of like traditional bipolar. It usually sets in by like young 1820s. There's like a pattern of it. And I, just with the values that I want, I definitely am like, what's up with the supplements, So the omega-3, the heavy dose of omega-3 has been studied for supporting bipolar condition. I also did not experience postpartum hair loss, and actually my hair like grew like crazy and was like so thick and luscious, and I truly believe that it was because of the omega-3s. And for anybody out there, like the fish oils that you would get at like Costco or something, they are like one dose has like 360 milligrams of omega-3, and it's mostly omega-6 that's in there, but the omega-3 is the important one. So I take there's like a high potency ones that you can get. I get mine on like Amazon, whatnot. So instead of having to take 15 pills, I there's 4 fish pills that I have to take a day.
Yeah.
Or that I choose to take a day. But I want to make that distinction for people out there. So those 2 supplements, also lithium orotate, which is so over the counter supplement. I do believe that was making a difference for me in the heightened state. Like it's not something that I take currently, but it's some like in my like game plan. If this starts to happen again, it's like as soon as I start feeling that like heightened energy surge, it's something that I've committed to like taking, right? So lithium orotate, those are the big ones. Ashwagandha and the omega-3. I was trying to think if there was anything else. Yeah, for like the mania bipolar, it's really hard. Like, so when I was in the depression, I kept reading like some antidepressants will catalyze a manic episode. So like, I don't fall under like just the normal person experiencing depression umbrella. Like and I did try some drugs, like, and they were so not the right fit. I do have a psychiatrist that I trust now that, when I told him my experience with one of the drugs, he was like, throw that shit in the trash. That's not the one for you. I was like, okay, good. Because I never want to experience that again. And like part of my game plan, if this were to occur, is I have some pharmaceutical sedatives. I have like, it's like I have like first I'll try melatonin because like the sleep thing is the most important. If anyone out there that's pregnant that has a history of depression, anxiety, OCD, like any of those things, like please, please, please figure out the sleep. There's like creative ways that you can do it. And that like if I choose to have another child, it's going to be like, no, I mandatory need to at least get like the 6 hours. Like I will pump. It's your job to feed baby at that time. And that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
That's how it's got to be. Right. So the sleep thing is so important. Yeah, and also, I will say that thankfully I've been practiced in and introduced to like ketogenic eating. So that's a high fat, low carb way of eating. And it's actually something that has been prescribed to people who have epilepsy, and epilepsy and bipolar disorder are related. Like the brain mapping of when like a brain is in mania and a brain is in epilepsy are very similar. And so I was really conscientious to get those good healthy fats as the like base of my nutrition during my healing. High carbs is high inflammation. And so like that will, what I've seen is that will just exacerbate everything, so.
Yeah. Did they try to, like when you were hospitalized, did they try to make you take drugs, or did you try anything there and didn't like it? And
yeah, so they were trying to give me a drug called Abilify, and I was just like so not about it. So there were a couple of times where I like pretended to take it, and I would just like shove it in my mouth somewhere and like show them. They already knew that I was like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to take it. My psychiatrist at the second place was see you next Tuesday. Like, I kept having to remind her that I was postpartum, that I was nursing, that I wanted to. This is the other thing. I didn't have the education to know about like milk supply, and so they gave me a manual pump when I was in the facility, and I didn't understand that I had to like pump as regularly as I would have been feeding my baby. And so at 4 months, like, I got out of the hospital and I was only producing like 1 ounce a day. And I wasn't with my baby. So I was like trying to get my supply back up, and then like pumping and the depression and the grief of everything and not being with my baby. It was like, that was like one of the most heartbreaking parts for me was the loss of, and I still breastfed for, like at least like anytime I was with my baby, we nursed for like bonding, for all the things, like, up until about like January of the next year. So I didn't find out about this until later, but I guess even if it's very little, like your baby still gets all those benefits of like the immune boosting benefits of breast milk, even if it's not 100%.
Yeah, it's not like all or nothing.
Yeah, so I'm grateful that I kept doing that, and that was like, I was definitely one of those like, I'll breastfeed you till, not like super extreme, but like you tell me when you're done, kind of a thing. So that was like really hard, and yes, and I learned that the drug that they were trying to give me also affects breast supply in a negative way. So like I had to fight to get, I was like, can I have like the papers and the pamphlets that tell me what this drug is about? Like, remember I'm breastfeeding and I'm super sensitive to this. And she's like, well, you're pumping and dumping anyway. It doesn't matter. And I was like, bro, I cannot have you talking to me like that. Like, so, and then at one point I was like, I was so resistant to it that they actually court ordered me to take drugs. Like, I'm sitting there with the judge, with my psychiatrist. And at this point, I was like, oh, I know the game now. And I was very collected. And I was like, I'm concerned about my breast milk supply. And the judge actually had a hard time, but ultimately sided with the doctor of like, they do have your best interest in mind and you need to take it.
Mm.
But it was mind blowing that was even a thing, you know?
Yeah. Did you have like anyone advocating for you? Like that you were postpartum and that you were in this?
Not really. Like it was actually kind of thank you for asking this because I hadn't really thought about this part and I'm writing a book, so I'll put this in it. Like I mentioned my mom is a cancer survivor and I went through a benign tumor in high school and my brothers had some health things and I've always known my mom to be the one that's like, you have to advocate for yourself. Don't just take the doctor's word at point blank truth. Like, do your own research, be your own advocate, like this and that. And I was like really disappointed that I think she was just tapped with the trauma of everything on her end that she wasn't. Well, actually, there was an issue because Vista Del Mar, it's a fucking mental institute. And so they have rules of like if you call and you're like, hey, is so-and-so there? Like they can't say, right?
Yeah.
So there was a gap in between like who they were willing to talk to. And they were willing to talk to my husband at the time, who wrote a letter to Vista Del Mar saying, I love my wife so much, but she needs help and please keep her in for maximum time. Like this motherfucker, I'm telling you. I'm telling you, there's many layers to this. So there was there was that. Plus, I think my mom was kind of tapped out. Plus, like, they didn't really know, like, I wasn't in contact with anyone who, like, normalized my experience. Even, like, my midwife had never even dealt with anybody with postpartum psychosis. And she's been doing midwifery for 20 years. And that kind of blows my mind. And I kind of, they say that, like, if you Google the data, it's like 1 in 1,000 mothers will experience postpartum psychosis. And I think it's way higher than that. I think there's a total spectrum of what occurs. And I think some of it doesn't get reported. A lot of it doesn't get reported, Had I not gotten caught, had I had my freaking bikini on when I went to dip my ass in the ocean, I swear to you, none of that would have happened. Like, I don't think I would have gotten caught up in the system like I did,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would they have known that I was one of those people if I hadn't been in the system?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people who do avoid getting in the system around it. So I think that number is actually much higher.
When did they like know that you had postpartum psychosis? Like,
I think it was, well, I can't remember. That's a great question. I'm actually I might have to like search my medical records about that. That very first hospitalization, when I came to, that's when they told me that I had 5150 involuntary hold, mandatory 3 days on me. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, we had a mental health evaluator come in when you were sedated AF and asked you all these questions. And one of the questions was, are you hearing voices? And I told them that I was talking to my spirit guides, which I would fucking tell anybody today. I'm like, yeah, I go into meditation and I talk to my angels and ancestors all the time. Like, that's just very regular language for me, even when I'm not like in outer space. And apparently they asked me what they were saying, and I was like, I'm not at liberty to tell you that. Even sedated, I was like, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if, like, I think it was determined at that point that I was like hallucinating and hearing voices, and like under that umbrella of mental health. I don't know if it had yet been connected to postpartum, like postpartum psychosis. Yeah, I know there was a point because I didn't know about it, and then I did know about it after the fact, but I can't actually remember like when that happened. It might have been in that in between time.
Yeah.
Of the two hospitalizations.
How much can you remember from each hospitalization?
I remember pretty much everything. Like the thing about the mania is sometimes like it's like your brain is just on hyperdrive. So actually you're like hyper aware, you're hyper smart, like, but sometimes it's moving so fast that like things get a little bit foggy in memory. But like I could tell you who I was homies with in there. I could tell you about the like I was freaking dogging the pharmacist ladies that were like all plastic surgeryed up. I was just like I was probably, I know I was a hoot inside because I'm an entertainer anyway. I'm a performer and like, sorry. That part of me like was really like, I also gave zero fucks.
Yeah.
So I was talking mad shit. Yeah, but I do remember most everything. There were times where they sedated me. And so when I was sedated, of course I was like knocked out, and then I would come to and be like, the fuck,
Okay. Yeah. I was like thinking, like when you said sedated the first time, I was like, oh, like, was she like out of it? But that makes sense. You were sedated. And that's when you
gave me
came
drugs.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. They gave, so what I learned is that they when people are freaking the fuck out and they need to be sedated and controlled like that, they give a drug called Haldol, which is just like a knock you on your ass kind of thing. So that very first time, I literally remember 6 needles going in me, and it could have been more. Like it was like boom, 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 and part of what I do remember reading in my medical records is that I was metabolizing everything really quickly, and I like I said, it was just like I was. It's almost like a superior physical state. Like I felt strong. Your adrenaline is like running. And so I think everything was like just on overdrive, including the metabolization of all the drugs. Like, they drug tested me. I didn't have shit in my system because I wasn't using, but what it looks like a meth high. it totally looks like that. Like I've never done meth in my life, but I imagine that's what it feels like. And so, yeah, like the suspicion of me being on drugs was definitely there until they tested my blood and nothing was in my system.
Yeah. Do you think that you would be able to like recognize if you were going into like a manic state again?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I do remember when, like I said, that first symptom for me internally was like the racing thoughts and the need to write it down. Like, and it was like nonstop, it was like all night. And so that was the same. That happened the first time around too. And so I'm like, okay, I'm taking note of that. And I do also remember like that was like Thursday when that started really ramping up. Friday was like the day where I was like, oh, I need to remember to eat. Like, so Friday was the day where like I didn't feel like I needed to eat. I don't think I slept at all Friday night. And and that was like the point where I was like, oh, this kind of feels similar to that thing that happened to me 4 years ago. So that's something I certainly like am taking note of. And it's something that like when my partner and I first started dating, all of this was super fresh. And the first time I experienced this, I also had, it was like mania followed by depression. And I had never experienced depression on that level before in my life. I was like, oh, like this is kind of embarrassing to say, but I was totally of that school of thought of like, oh, depression is just like just change your life and things will be better. Well, I do think there's some of that to consider. Like it was like, no, my life is great. And I still feel like, deflated, like it was a very humbling experience for me to be like, oh, this is what people are talking about when they're saying they are experiencing depression. But I had like a huge shame component. I'm a business owner. I'm a community leader. I was a singer of a band at that point in my life. I live in a small ass town. I grew up here. I go out. I know everybody all the time. And I had this like, oh my God, who am I if I'm crazy? Like, who's gonna believe me? Or like, can I even be a leader? Or, like all of it was that I had such a big shame component and I had worked through all of that. And so the gift of that was during my postpartum experience, I didn't really have that shame component. I really I was like, whoa, I just went through like a shitstorm. And like, so when me and my partner and I met in February 2022, and I was very upfront with all of this. And he met me with just like understanding and compassion and and so a lot of the conversation that I have with him is, if you see this happening, like check in with me,
Yeah.
And like the very first thing is like prioritizing my sleep at that point. And I will say I went to Peru last year for a retreat, and it was like, it wasn't an ayahuasca retreat or anything like that. It was just like we were in the Amazon though, meditating, and I came home from that trip and I was like feeling that high, like the thing that happens before like things get ramped up. And I had to really just like focus on grounding. I took some melatonin, and it took a couple of days, but then I like sunk into it. And then I had that down part of the integration and I was good. The wave was not like huge spike like it had. So, it's it's a matter of being in relationship with this energy that is available to my body, you know?
Mhm.
And I will say there's, a lot of creatives have experiences of mania and depression. Like a lot of creatives. I think Gaga has a bipolar diagnosis, and there is real creative magic. It's like, I think I've heard it been described as like it feel like it's creative genius that comes through. I mean, Kanye West, okay, perfect example. His ass is crazy,
Mhm.
but he's also a fucking billionaire. You know what I mean? Who makes insane art. He's this insane, crazy creative genius. And so, part of the diagnoses and part of what you look at is delusions of grandeur. And I'm like, do you think Kanye would be motherfucking Kanye and where he is without delusions of grandeur? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I am also I'm an entrepreneur. I have a huge vision for my life. I always have.
Mhm.
And so I'm really learning, it's all learning. It's all learning of who I am and the fabric of what I'm made of. And when I first experienced this, at one point, one of the psychiatrists that I had a 5-minute conversation with, diagnosed me with bipolar. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I ended up having a conversation with somebody who has classic bipolar 1, I think. And she was like, listen, it's not a death sentence. She's like, actually, this condition makes me super creative, makes me show up as a great mom with my child. And I know that if I've been up all night doing cool creative shit, I take this one white pill to help me go to sleep to break the cycle,
Mhm.
So that's where I'm at with things is how do I be in relationship? And I really am looking at the embodiment piece. I'm a movement specialist. My whole thing is embodiment as a
Mhm.
means to heal. And I'm like, yeah, it feels like I leave my body. And it's like, okay, I really think that oh my God, I need to go to the beach and get my ass in salt water was all about getting back in my body, grounding into the earth.
Mhm.
And that's what sleep is. Sleep is spiritual regeneration. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's that's the framework that really resonates and works for me.
Mhm.
And at this, the woman Cami that I told you that runs that nonprofit and had also experienced postpartum, she said to me in our first session, she's like, yeah, but can't you see the gift in all of this? And I was like, fuck off. No, I wish none of this would happen. My life was falling apart. My husband left me. I'm a single mom, blah, 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 blah. I just was hospitalized. And now I can stand in the place of everything was for me. And I chose that, we don't choose our trauma or circumstances, but we do get to choose who we're going to be about it
Mhm.
and how we're going to have it shape us.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful for all of it because, it exposed my weak ass ex-husband right away.
Yeah.
And as heartbreaking as that was, I trusted in that rejection. And now I'm with a partner that feels I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like,
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I applaud you for catching these little signs of going into something and you being able to step back and look at it and ground yourself. I think that's really amazing.
Mhm.
thank you. And I will say, like, the, like I called it the initiation, right? And that last part of my depression, I kept describing it. I was like, dude, I feel like I'm getting a software upgrade. But like the fucking spinny ball is doing the thing. And so like I can't access my old way of being, but I also can't access my new way of being. It's just like I just gotta chill.
Yeah.
And then all of 2022 was, and still I'm like, I operate differently now. Like my body has zero tolerance for like the bypassing of its own needs. It won't do it. And before I was like an Energizer bunny, and I'll go out, I'll do the things. I don't know if you're familiar with human design. I'm a generator, and it is very easy for me to do. And now, like I don't have the capacity, and I see that as a huge gift and a huge blessing. And I feel like I'm in this space of like, well, I can't operate on adrenaline anymore. So how can we do this sustainably? And part of the things that I work with my clients on is how do we prevent burnout? Like we're just not, like, it's not about hustle, you guys. Like we're not here for the no days off 5 a.m. club. No, does not have to be like that. How can we create your life in a sustainable way, in a steady way, and with the flow of, we're cyclical beings, especially as women. So how can we dance with that in a way that's sustainable and not something you're going to pay for just later?
Yeah. You talked about sleep being a big component, but do you have any other like advice for new moms or moms who had, mental health issues before or after?
Yeah. So, the thing I would recommend for any new mom, any expecting mom, is know where you can turn to. I gratefully did not have a component of my psychosis that was like telling me to harm myself or harm my child. But that's not everybody's story. So really having a conversation with your partner too, because it's like, for me, it took a while to be like, oh yeah, there's something happening. I just felt like mom beast mode. Like I'm superwoman. And so really like educating the support system, whether it's your partner or family or whoever's around you, to like know what to look for, and to like have, because some of it is like I did struggle with intrusive thoughts of like gnarly things happening, or even like me doing violent things. But it wasn't like I was actually going to do them. I was just like, it's intrusive thoughts. So also like having like a safe space to release it, and to say like, hey, this is what's happening. Like, and knowing that it's not like knowing where to turn to, right? Knowing where the resources are. Postpartum Support International, they have hotlines. They have support groups. They have a lot of resources. Before we hit record, I shared with you like that wish and prayer out to like please make use of my experience to help others. And I actually just got hired by that nonprofit, that local nonprofit, to run those support groups. Because I've been a life coach. I facilitated things. The woman who was doing it, she's the director. She's like getting too busy to do that part. And so I just got trained I did a training with Postpartum Support International. And I'm so excited that I'm going to be able to serve in that way to other moms. And
awesome.
and there's resources out there for us. And just knowing who you can turn to, and peer support is like the data. There's like some data out there that for postpartum, peer support is just as effective, maybe even more effective than like medication. And that fully makes sense to me as being somebody who went through it. Just like dropping that, like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Oh, like I'm not, because that's the lie of depression, that like you're broken. You're the one that's fucked up. Nobody else is going through this, So even just having that like normalization of things is very healing.
For sure.
Yeah. That's a big thing of ours, is like listening to other people's stories just helps us know that you're not alone.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Prioritizing the sleep for sure. I also and prepping for postpartum. Like I didn't read all of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with The First 40 Days, that book.
I've heard about it a little bit.
So it's really shares, I think it's Chinese tradition of how that postpartum days, the first 40 days is treated. And I didn't even read, I read the first, I think I even read just like the intro. And I was like, it changed my whole attitude going into postpartum. And it basically was like, spend the first 10 days in bed, spend the second 10 days around your bed, spend the third 10 days like in your house, and then like that fourth 10 days, like entertain going on maybe a walk, and that like just helped me just even prepare for that. Unfortunately, literally all this stuff happened like at day 41 for me.
Yeah.
So like, you can only prepare so much, but really taking it easy, and giving yourself grace. I mean, they're saying postpartum really is like the first 2 years.
7.
At first 2 to 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wild.
so like, I mean, whatever they say, 6 weeks of 6 weeks is your postpartum. I'm like, what? No, that's
a joke.
No, that's a joke. Yeah. So really like surrendering to the big lessons of like, you're not in fucking control. But how can you support this? And definitely the sleep thing. Definitely like, I wish I didn't even have an established relationship with a psychiatrist that I trusted. That took a while. And like psychiatrists are freaking booked out. So it like, we had to like kind of pull some strings and like beg and plead to get an appointment sooner than later. So preparing all of those things, like a just in case kind of protocol, is what I would recommend. And really like training your support person, like training your partner, like it is not about you right now, bro.
Can we like just normalize like that you don't have to do shit after you have a baby. Like me and Liz have been like sending each other back and forth these videos of like, get ready with me that influencers do when they're like 2 weeks postpartum.
Fuck off.
We're like, this is not real. This is not how it is fucking depicted. And we're just like getting angry.
Let's stop glorifying it.
Yes.
Let's stop glorifying snapping back into your body and like getting back to it. Like even, I mean, God bless Beyonce, but she has that line in one of her songs that's like pop a baby out and back to business. Like, I don't know what the line is, but there's that. And I'm like, no, like this is so huge. This is so huge on all the levels, physical, spiritual, mental, relational, like how it shifts your relationship to, all of it. That 100%, like I got plenty friends having babies right now, and I see one of them is like 4 weeks postpartum going on first hike with baby. And I'm like, what is happening? And it like breaks my heart kind of, because I'm just like, can we not just like relax? Like, can we not just like actually listen to our body instead of being like, oh, this is what I should be doing, like,
yeah, we need rest.
Wild. Yeah. Rest. Like going, like I shared, if we end up having another baby, I'm like, how do I prep to pretty much, like, I love working and I love what I do. So I don't even know if I could stay away from what I do for a year, but can I create my life to like have that allowance if that's what's right for me, And I totally get like people got to pay the bills. So, I know that there's a lot of constraint on a lot of people, but you have nothing to prove. You have nothing to prove. You already made a miracle. There is nothing to prove. You don't have to prove that you're a little badass little mama getting back to work and like getting back to the grind. No, motherhood is so honorable. And this period of time is so sacred and special and yours. And trust me, I get on my soapbox with like my close friends that are about to have babies. I'm like, listen up.
Yeah.
And also, I got your back at like 2 a.m. when you need to text somebody because I'm a late owl. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. First of all, before we just segue into that, I just really, really appreciate the space you held for me today. Like I shared, I am planning on writing a book, and every time I get to tell my story, like, I get to have this recording now as reference to what went down and how I'm processing things. And every time I get to tell my story, it's healing for me. So, thank you just for who you are and who you're being right now. Yeah, I have a podcast that I launched at the beginning of this year. And don't worry, if you guys hear that crying baby, it's my boyfriend's baby and he's with him. I'm not like abandoning the coop right now. So yeah, I have a podcast. It's called The Bootyverse. I have a company called Bomb Booty. We do guided dance party workouts, and really like the workout is like so secondary to the practice of being in your body and what that does for you. It's really based in feminine movement, a lot of hip circles, a lot of like let's create some sexiness and like practice looking at our bodies like yeah, girl,
Yeah.
So, and I do a lot of ass shaking and twerking in my classes. It's I kind of mentioned like the body trauma relationship, and shaking, like even if you're just like shaking and bouncing, it's a very powerful way to release stuck emotion, release trauma. And then like the ass shaking is like your root and sacral chakra. So it's a really potent way to heal yourself. And in my book, connection is the root of all healing. So whether that's connecting to your body, connecting to spirit, connecting with others, connecting to the earth. And I really believe in creating your life. So the Bootyverse, the tagline is conversations about creating a bootylicious life. And the Bootyverse actually I was rebranding. My company used to be called Ignite Booty School, but somebody has the trademark on Booty School. And the Bootyverse was something that my boyfriend actually came up with. And I was like, I got to use that for something. That's just so good. I love it so much. So that's the vibe, like in what I do with my company, we're dancing to get free. We're dancing for liberation, for that inner liberation, for that unity between like body and spirit and self-acceptance and taking up space and that translating to feeling all those things in your life, So that's what the Bootyverse is about. I would freaking love to have y'all come on the pod. But we can talk about that later. The Bootyverse is available everywhere. For people who want to kick it with me, I cruise on Instagram mostly. My Instagram handle is my name, so it's Shawna, SHAWNA _Mox, MOX. And then also Bomb Booty is connected to that. It's BOMBOOTY. And I'm just really here to stand for women and feminine expression, like divine feminine expression and energy in the world is like what I'm here for. And that's who mostly comes to my class. Even though it's open to anybody who wants to come. So yeah, it's healing through joyful ass shaking and togetherness.
I love it.
I'm going to check that out. Sounds really fun.
Definitely. Yeah, I got something. I'm getting an app together, so I'm going to develop an app. So
nice.
You can shake it in the comfort of your own home. And there's there's things happening. So if y'all listening out there, you like my vibe, please come play with me in my world.
I love it.
Yeah.
If Liz and I ever find ourselves in California, which hopefully we will make sure we come to your booty shaking class and
definitely. And you can I freaking stream them on Zoom, so you can come shake it with me. Wherever you are in the world. Yeah, I'll make sure I have that info for you guys, and that's on the website for anybody who wants to check that out.
Awesome. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my. Well, thank you so much for sharing your very personal story. I think it's going to help.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't even know if I said this while we were recording, but when I was going through it, I was seeking somebody's story. I was like, what happens after this bullshit?
Yes.
And I could only find literally 2 episodes about postpartum psychosis. So, right away I was like, well, I'm going to be one of the people to share my story for sure. And so, So I'm, like I said, I'm so grateful to be here. And if this story touches you and moves you, like, slide in my DMs. I love hearing that. And it, really, it's fuel for the fire, for me. And also I just like connecting with moms and anyone who's humaning in this way,
Cool.
There is something that like just like motherhood really just breaks you open, and it's so beautiful and so raw.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Well, thank you so much again.
And I'm here for I just want to say I'm here for moms being in their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really what I do with the movement stuff. And so if anybody out there is like, I know so many of us struggle with like, whoa, like, what is this new body that I have? Or what is this changed body that I have? And, like I said, so many of us like suffer through trauma during birth, and that will lead to disembodiment. And so, I'm starting to work with people one-on-one with the movement stuff, and really getting from a place of like, this like narrative that's out there of like, you're used up, or like your child tore through you, or, like all that kind of stuff, to like, how do we find deep reverence for this miracle maker that we're in? And I'm so deeply committed to like women and mothers, and embodiment is the way. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. That's all. Thank you for having me.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week, and thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!